sweet time, I ended up working on a TV show called The Get Down, which is on Netflix. And it's a show about the beginnings of hip hop. And during that process, I got to get really tight with these two guys, Rich and Tone. They danced with Michael Jackson, they choreographed for Madonna, and I remember coming out of that experience thinking, man, one day I'd love to get them to work with Misty, but it seemed impossible because they did commercial street dance kind of, and Misty was in the classical and modern world. So I go see Misty in LA at La Bayadere, what you know Bayadere?
The Ballet La Bayadere at the Music Center in Los Angeles.
And what was really striking, again, I hadn't seen her dance probably about 3 or 4 years at that point, was that we'd always joked when we did A Ballerina's Tale, you know, you're gonna be an actress one day. And she was like, no. But what struck me was that she was doing kind of silent acting. It wasn't just her dance, but I was really watching her a lot when she wasn't dancing and when she was in character. And the next day, I think I said that night actually, we thought, I think I have an idea. And I think the next day you had a photo shoot. I said, what about a silent dance movie, if that made sense? And so we kind of battled around. The only really idea I had at the time was because she was a, ballerina, and I was coming around street dance. Maybe we can do a story about, the street dancer and the ballerina. I think Misty kind of liked it, but maybe not. So she and Layla Fayaz, who's here, who's also a producer of the film. I pitched an idea, and then you guys decided, because the street dancer was homeless, and then you kind of ran with it. Where did you take it?
Yeah. So, whenever I think about dance film and content, there's not a lot out there that to me is done in an authentic way that really truly represents who we are as artists, and this thought of street dance and ballet. I think about a certain film that is corny to me, and that was my fear. It was like, how do we make this film and bring together different genres of dance and have them really mesh? And dance is a silent language, and how do we have all of these languages come together and have true, clear communication? Not a ballerina trying to do street dance, or vice versa, but to have these worlds really collide in a beautiful way. So that was my number one. That's what we have to accomplish if we're going to do this, and I think we did that. But with this idea of taking this character who was homeless and thinking about, well, what community are we going to focus on, and how do we make this story really highlight what a community might be going through with dance as that tool, that storytelling tool. And we talked about LA. You were living in LA at the time and seeing it right in front of you, daily. And I'm from LA, and I just thought visually, I just don't know. I wanted it to be on the street and connected to the community. And I was spending a lot of time in Oakland. My husband is from Oakland, and I just thought, that community is really going through this, gentrification and housing crisis, and it felt so magnified at the time. And Oakland, I think, just has such a rich, beautiful backdrop for film visually, all the murals and the water, and then just the culture in general. This incredible history of activism and social justice, and so it just felt like the right community to focus on. That's kind of where the whole story it just kept evolving. And I think what Layla and I brought to the creative conversation was, we felt like if we were going to be telling a story about this community, we wanted the community to be telling the story.
Absolutely, yeah.
not us as outsiders, but so that's why it was important for us to have almost an entire cast, even creative cast of people that were born or from the area, spent many years in the community and understood it. You know, Raphael Saadiq as composer, he's from Oakland, Rich and Tone, who are from Richmond. Alonzo King, who choreographed all the ballet and contemporary parts, and he's been in San Francisco with his company, Lions Ballet, for many, many years. All of the, you know, the dancers that you saw in the film are from the community, so it was really important that we spoke to these issues with people from there.
Yeah, we did a research trip just before the pandemic.
Right before the pandemic.
Yeah, in end of 2019. And in fact, the dancer you see dancing in the red shirt, he's doing the crazy stuff with his arms and elbows, Crow. We met him on one of our first research trips. And at one point we did a rough,
like a concept film so that we could raise the money to make the film. And Crow actually starred in it with me.
Yeah.
It's just a short little.
So a lot of and the scene where in the street dance scene in the middle, on the intersection, a lot of those were dancers that we met again in 2019 on that original research trip. So a lot of that was very fruitful, going on the ground and meeting people. We did have, Layla and Misty and the support of the Ford Foundation particularly, who were really, really important, you know, got most of the money together to do this. And we had a director attached in a production company. And was it 2 weeks before we were supposed to shoot?
2 or 3 weeks.
3 weeks. They pulled the plug on us. They were jerking us around for a while. Like, we're like, oh, they weren't being, you know, we said, well, look at it, it's just that they're busy. And then they just pulled the plug, and we were like 3 weeks without a director and without really a production team set up. And it was a moment like, are we gonna do this? We found a couple of people, and I really want to shout out the director, Lauren Feineman, who has a background, had really a career in doing dance films, short films, and she'd been a dancer herself. And really she came to our rescue because we were up against it, and to jump into any production that was pretty far along and to come in and be able to contribute was major. Why don't you talk a little about what you think Lauren brought to the party?
I mean, to me, it was like, well, this was meant to be. This is, you know, it takes, you know, knowing dance and understanding movement and our line and visually what's, you know, the best choices. Not just anyone can shoot dance, and so she definitely had a leg up in that area, but she also, you know, as a woman, was very compassionate and very thoughtful, and came into the space not trying to take over, but, you know, trying to support us. And I think because of that, because we were getting that energy from her, I was like, oh, come in, bring all the creative ideas you have. And I feel like the whole film was really just a collaboration with all of the artists involved, the choreographers, you know, typically with the choreographer, they come in with the concept and with an idea, at least in my experience within the classical ballet world. And, you know, I walked into this space saying, this is the story, this is what this is what I want my characters to say, but this is a collaborative effort. And so small tweaks and things were made because I wanted the choreographers to really have a say and have a voice, and so that was really vital.
So let's talk a little bit about what the choreographers did, because I think sometimes we say they were the choreographer, but what the style, what they brought. Like the opening dance with Babatunde Johnson is quite elaborate, and that was done by Rich and Tone, who were guys who come out of a commercial dance world. So for them, I think they were really jazzed at the idea to do a piece that challenged them. We're not just doing a performance piece, we're doing an artistic piece.
Yeah, I think for them, I think what was so interesting for Rich and Tone was, like you said, it wasn't something that they're used to doing, because what I envisioned for Babatunji's character, and you know, the beauty of art in a film is that you can take away whatever it is you want from, you know, the film and the story and the characters, but what I took away from, in terms of how I was approaching my character with Babatunji's character, was that he was really this representation of the community. So to me, he was Oakland, and so I felt like he needed to be able to kind of speak all the languages. He wasn't just a street dancer, he wasn't a ballet dancer, he wasn't a contemporary dancer, he wasn't a modern dancer. And so that was a challenge for Rich and Tone, to be able to take on that type of movement. So it wasn't just hip hop, it wasn't just turf dancing like they do in Oakland, but it had almost this more lyrical feel kind of combined with everything. And they really executed exactly what I envisioned.
It was an amazing day because we envisioned doing that whole dance in one take. And
and he did.
He did it. He did it about 4 or 5 times, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
I mean,
we were all crying.
Yeah, at the end of it, we're all crying, and because it was a spiritual.
Yeah.
To go and do that kind of work over and over, and also we're trying to get it with the sun. There's the whole thing with the light. So that was one of the. There were many moments in the process that were quite, wow, and that was one of them. Like that really felt like he went to another level. And for Rich and Tone, who come out of it was very intense for them to see their work taken to the level of art. I also want you to talk about Alonzo King, because he's a very well-known dancer in the dance world, the modern dance world. Talk about there were so many great performances in it, but maybe the dance that you guys did at the end. Why don't you talk a little bit about how you conceived that with him?
So Alonzo King and I have known each other. Well, he's known me since I was 15 years old, so a very, very long time. And we worked together when I was 21 years old. I guested with his company, and we toured together. And he was really the first choreographer that really challenged me and pushed me, stepping outside of the classical ballet realm and outside of my company of American Ballet Theater. And so, thinking of working with him 20 years later or something, I think it was about 20 years, it was a little, it was like, well, he's the perfect person for it. It was a little intimidating, thinking back to that time when I was just, just up and coming. And so it was really interesting to step into the space, and there was just such a different dynamic. He was looking at me as an adult and, a responsible artist, that, this was going to be a collaboration. And that's literally what it was. He did not have any movement that was mapped out in his head when we stepped into the studio on any given day. So with that last pas de deux, it came together just in pieces. And, we would just even do small exercises, because, what I wanted to come across and to be portrayed was the storytelling. Like, we're using dance to tell a story, that it shouldn't just, I didn't want it to feel like you're just looking at abstract movement. And so, we would do these exercises where it literally was like an acting class, where he would just have me. It's so hard for dancers when you spend your whole life training and learning to hold yourself and just to let go and be a human and walk like a person. And in the midst of dancing, where you have to be supported, you have to hold yourself, but then you also want to look organic and human. So we did a lot of that, where I would just, he'd have me close my eyes and just like walk across the studio. And that moment at the end where I leave Babatunji and I transition from in the tunnel to outside. I mean, we worked on that for hours. He's like, nope, you still don't look human. Nope, you still look like a ballerina. So it was.
Well, that's one of the most powerful. To me, that's such a powerful moment. Mm-hmm. So he pushed you, but he pushed you. It really, the way you walked out of there. This is some silent movie shit right here. It really resonated and had a lot of emotional power.
Yeah, I feel the same. It's my favorite part of the whole film.
Yeah, it's a while. I also want to talk about the process of dealing with homelessness. It was one of the things that were really, from the very beginning, was a central point for what we wanted to deal with. But also just the idea of trying to be respectful. I just remember I think I went with Lauren and Ryan, the DP, who did a fantastic job, by the way. It looks amazing on the big screen. To do a lot of shoot some of the B-roll stuff. And
it was dangerous.
There was at some point where really during the day, I was like, we can't shoot anymore. Because I felt like we were like, this is too, we're intruding on people's lives, and homeless people or people who are houseless, they don't want to be on camera necessarily. So we definitely got some attitude from people and a little edge. And so there was a moment, I remember thinking, wow, we're doing this, but we have to, there's enough. Let's not just be pointing the camera and do poverty porn. And I think it's one of the things decisions that we collectively made, that the only people in the film who were going to speak were homeless. And I think that made it more powerful,
Yeah, I mean, everything you're saying, like it was just important for us to shine a light, not say that we have the answer for this issue, but to shine a light and highlight what a community is going through, but also to give you different perspectives. I think that even in my own experience, like I grew up houseless for most of my childhood, living in motels and other people's homes and sleeping in crazy places. And people look at me now and would never assume that that's something that I experienced. Or maybe even at the time that I was going through that. Like, there's not just one face to this issue, and that's something that was important for us to show with the character Rose. That she's one paycheck away from being evicted.
and that's many Americans.
Yeah, and so that was important for us. That there's not just one experience.
I also think one of the things that resonates, well, two things. One is the issue of dementia that comes up. My mother is experiencing that. She's in a facility dealing with it. So, and I know so many people are dealing with, you have the combination of homelessness, and you have what do we do with our elders? And there's an epidemic of dementia and Alzheimer's. I almost know everyone who's adult has at least one parent who has some issues with it. So that be able to weave that in. And Christina Johnson was fantastic in interpreting that. And I love the idea, because it's something that I've experienced, trying to get your parent to remember. And so that scene, with the picture is so resonant, and I'm sure I know other people have gone through that same thing, so I think it adds another level. Watching I haven't seen the film on the screen in a while, so it was actually pretty emotional for me to watch it again. A lot of stuff hit me harder having not seen it in a while. I want to talk about the music.
I just want to say something about that too. I mean, it was really, I'm sure emotional for you on the set too. But like having you there, someone who's experiencing it, to literally in between takes to go to you and have conversations with you about how you would feel in this situation was extremely helpful for me and my character. But it was also, the way the story evolved in how we paralleled, the dementia and her Rose, my character, her mother losing her memory, and this loss of culture and history, and how that parallels with gentrification. So she's experiencing this in her home, and she's experiencing it outside of her home, watching her community be wiped away, and this history be wiped away, and all of these things that she's struggling with. But I just thought that was done well.
Yeah, it worked out. And it's funny, the only thing I regret, we weren't able to, we had a whole section of memory of dancers of the past, literally had different Oakland street dance styles that would sort of represent Christina's or memory, but it just kind of didn't work. It's interesting to watch a film in process too, because I think the editing and the pacing of it really, some stuff that you love, like some of you, when they kill your darlings, there's some stuff I love that's not in there, but it did need to be in there. So getting Raphael Saadiq to contribute was an amazing, was a struggle to get Raphael Saadiq to focus and get him on, because he's a busy man. He's on tour with Tony right now. But the songs that he contributed are, I think, some of the best stuff he's written in a long time. And because they're so grounded in the Bay, they're so connected. The oak tree, because a lot of people don't know Oakland, that's the root of Oakland being, the oak tree thing, and that's their symbol. And the way he weaved that in, I thought his music really resonated and gave an emotional, gave the subtext. But also, what are I'm going to blank, the people who came in and also worked on the score? Layla was the name of that company?
Oh,
Berwood Music.
Yeah, they also, I
Berwood
mean,
Music Group, yeah.
Layla,
Kind of tying
because
it all together.
Raphael is obviously the big name, and we hear him singing. But a lot of interstitial music was done by a company called Burwood Music, and I thought their contribution was fantastic as well. Because when you decide to go and do a film without dialogue, you're putting an incredible burden on the music to carry the story. And so Raphael contributed, he could contribute, but when they came in and they pulled all the threads together for us, I always want to give them a shout out for that, because I think that obviously we were going to go Raphael Saadiq to the music, but these brothers really did contribute quite a bit as well.
I mean, it was incredible for me. There were times when it was hard to get him to focus because he had a lot of stuff going on. But I was just so impressed with how committed he was. He really, I mean, he was there with us on every meeting. I don't know if you remember that in the beginning. We were doing Zoom meetings once a week, and Raphael was there, sitting on those calls, listening and getting ideas. And I could text him or call him at any hour, and he would pick up.
'Cause he's up every hour.
Yeah, exactly. and he was just really invested and involved. And even if he would create a track, and we'd go in the studio, and we're like, this isn't right, and I would say, this is the feel we want, and within an hour, you'd have a new track, and we were like, this is crazy. And he really just brought it to life, because initially we weren't sure if we even wanted lyrics, on the songs. And when he delivered 2 of those songs, I was like, oh no, we're gonna have it.
Absolutely. I think also you should say that one of the goals, I know Misty's production company was Layla Life in Motion. I should know about it because they're doing great stuff.
Life in Motion Productions, our production company.
There you go. Is to try and take this idea and make it into a series of films using a similar technique. That is really one of the goals. How many people really here felt like they could understand the story without words? Oh, well, there you go. We should take a picture of that, because that's always the challenge, is like, oh, no dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, to me, what we want to do with our production company is really kind of elevate what dance is on screen, what art is in our culture, and really normalize that experience. I don't think ballet should be high art and should be separate from any other genre of art or dance. And how do we make ballet relevant to many communities? How do we tell stories that represent us? And so I feel like this truly is a modern ballet. And I think a lot of, especially young people, especially people of color, don't always feel that ballet is something for them or something that they understand. And it's possible to tell stories without dialogue and show the power of dance and of movement.
So we have I'm going to do a little commercial before we end for another project that Misty's in. I directed a documentary that's coming on Paramount Plus, December 2nd. It's the Thriller 40th anniversary, Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Wow.
And Misty Copeland is in that documentary. And you're like, why is Misty Copeland in a Michael Jackson Thriller documentary? Because a lot of and actually Richard Toner in it as well. So one of the things that's really been transformative for me and all these experiences I've had is movement and performance. I think a lot of people who come out of music worry about the recording and the making of the record. But if you're not really studying performance, how do you move on stage? What do those movements mean? What clothes are you wearing on stage, and why are you wearing that clothing? When you talk about Thriller, you're talking about the red jacket. Everyone knows the red jacket I'm talking about. Everyone knows about the glove. So think about that. That's 40 years ago. And those things this couple of days ago on 6th Avenue in the Village, there was about, I feel like 1,000 people doing the Thriller dance. It was crazy. So that speaks to the iconic power of the right clothes, the right image. It's interesting because Misty's done the Firebird. The Firebird is one of those iconic images. Swan Lake, how these things resonate. And so Misty's in the doc talking from her perspective about Michael Jackson as a dancer. And it's really interesting to bring her ballet perspective on watching a quote unquote pop artist work. So if you get a chance, if you have Paramount Plus, December 2nd. It's a little bit more misty. So I think we're being told to wrap it up. I just want to thank you again for coming out and tell your friends about it. Okay.
Thank you.